The Virginia Tech Hokies continue to try to rebuild under Brent Pry, and last season was a struggle. This season could be a struggle as well. However, there is some hope amongst the fans in Blacksburg that there at least is some build in 2023. So will this Virginia Tech program start to build back towards the top of the ACC this year, or is this going to be another struggling year for the Virginia Tech Hokies? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate, and welcome to my channel. I'm predicting all 133 FBS level college football teams this summer, which means I am doing your favorite team. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you hear your thoughts on your favorite team. But hey, if you haven't subscribed or you can't subscribe for whatever reason, hey, there are more ways that you can help me support my channel. You're doing one right now by watching the video, and you guys can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, and anything else to help interact and support the channel. Whatever you guys are able to do would mean a lot. To me. Sorry, I had a little frog in my throat. It is storming outside as of recording this, so apologies if you hear anything in the background, but I've changed my mic settings a little bit to hopefully cut that out. Let's talk about the Virginia Tech Hokies. ACC predictions are wrapping up today. Let's talk about Virginia Tech. Hey, how do we do things around here? Well, we're going to go through a roster overview and look at who the team lost, who's coming back, and who's coming in through the transfer portal and recruiting class, as well as taking a look at the Hokie 2023 football schedule and giving it a game-by-game preview and prediction. So without further ado, let's enter Sandman and talk about the Virginia Tech Hokies for 2023. If my slide would change, there we go. Quarterback room, you do lose Jason Brown out of that quarterback room. Only threw 13 passes last year, 65 yards. Again, didn't really play a whole lot, but you do get your starter coming back from last year, and that is former, I believe, Marshall transfer in Grant Wells. 2,171 yards, 9 touchdowns and 9 interceptions last year. Definitely was underwhelming. However, I believe Grant Wells has the necessary pieces to improve that stat line and get a little better for this Virginia Tech Hokie team. Not saying he was bad at quarterback last year for them. I don't think he was that bad at all. However, there is a lot of room for improvement from last season. However, if Grant Wells, or I should say if Brent Pry determines that Grant Wells is not up to standards, you do get a transfer coming into this quarterback room. Kyron Drones comes over from Baylor, former 4-star out of high school, a 3-star rated transfer, according to 24/7 Sports. In the running back room, you do lose your leading rusher last season, 74 carries for 443 yards. It is Keyshawn King, tack on 3 touchdowns to that number as well. And your second leading rusher in Jalen Holston also leaves as well. 321 yards on a few more carries than what King had, and 5 touchdowns for him last season. Not to mention, when we talk about Grant Wells, had 212 yards and led the team with 6 rushing touchdowns, was the team's third leading rusher. So maybe a little bit of uncertainty in this running back room, but I think Malachi Thomas is a very solid option. Had 37 carries, 146 yards, and a touchdown last season. And then you are also getting a transfer coming in whose name I know for a fact I will butcher, so I apologize sincerely. Bishal Tootin is coming in to help bolster that running back room, and there are some other names that I could have listed that just weren't on the board. Wide receiver room. Well, you lose some pretty solid pieces here. Caleb Smith is gone, and that should be a Caleb with a K. My sincerest apologies there, but was the leading receiver by far on this team last year. 674 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. You also lose Jaden Blue from last season as well. You do return Dwayne Lofton, who was your second leading receiver among wide receivers, 3rd overall by just 2 yards, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns for him last year. And Stephen Goss now comes back, 134 yards for him last season. However, there's a plethora of wide receiver transfers coming in, and all of them should see significant time. Ali Jennings is the best one out of that group, a 4-star rated transfer out of Old Dominion. Taquan Felton is coming over here as well. And then Jalen Lane comes over from Middle Tennessee State. So all very solid options to help boost this wide receiver room. Tight end wise, well, hey, you do return Nick Gallo, who was your second leading receiver, 256 yards, and Daquan Wright, who had 208 yards last season, 4th leading receiver. So both will be back for the tight end duo for Virginia Tech. So you boost up the wide receiver room, maybe lose some talent in the running back room, But again, I think they have some solid options in the offense that's got to take some steps this year. Oh, and my apologies, did not mention the offensive line, as Silas Zanzi and Johnny Jordan are gone off the offensive line. However, Cade Moore, Jesse Hansen, and Xavier Chaplin, among others, return for this offensive line. Defensively, what can we expect for the Virginia Tech Hokies this season? Well, when we take a look at that defensive line, Taijuan Garbutt, 6.5 sacks last year. That led the team, actually more than doubled anyone other sack production on the team. 31 tackles, was the top 10 tackler for this team. He is gone, as well as Jalen Griffin, who is not far behind him with 27 tackles and 2 sacks last season. You do return the likes of Cole Nelson, CJ McCray, Mario Kendricks, and Norrell Pollard. Still some solid options on the defensive line for sure. When you take a look at the linebacking unit, well, you do lose Dax Holyfield. I was a big fan of Dax Holyfield. I think he was a really good player. He was your leading tackler last year at 82 tackles, 2 sacks. I think you lose a really good player in him. However, there is a lot that returns to this linebacking unit. Keonta Jenkins and Alan Tisdale were both top 10 tacklers for this team, as well as guys by the likes of Jaden Keller, Kelly Lawson, and Jaden McDonald, all coming back to this team. All some pretty good players. When you take a look at the defensive back room, well, Chamari Connor's going to be gone. That was your second leading tackler last year, 66 tackles, really good safety, as well as Armani Chapman, who's going to be leaving as well. Had 5 passes defended, 1 interception last year. Just a handful of Hokies had a pick last year. He was one of the 4 that had an interception for the Hokies last year. However, you do return a pretty good defensive back player in Dorian Strong, Nasir Peoples, Jalen Stroman, and Mansour Delane are all very good players as well. And then you get a transfer in Derek Canteen over from Georgia Southern. That's a 4-star rated transfer to help boost that secondary. So there is a lot to improve with Virginia Tech here, and they did add some good transfers here and there to help recoup from what they've lost, maybe even improved some positions as well. Your head coach is Brent Pry, offensive coordinator is Tyler Bowen, and your defensive coordinator is Chris Marv. Will this translate to the football field? Well, let's look at the schedule for Virginia Tech in 2023. Hey, any game at home is going to be underlined, and any game on the road will be in italics or the slanted text. Any game in green is a game where I see the Hokies being able to win easily. Yellow is going to be a game where, okay, that's a bit of a back and forth, maybe a tough game, but a win nonetheless. And then red is a loss. Let's start with the game week 1, as you should do, against Old Dominion. Now, I can't remember if it was last year. In my mind, it was last year, but it may have been a couple years ago where Old Dominion pulled off the upset against this Virginia Tech team. And I think they can absolutely do it again this year. However, with losing Lee Jennings, you lose a lot of explosiveness on offense for that team. To this Virginia Tech team, I think he'll be motivated to beat his former club. Now, the game is highlighted in green, but Old Dominion absolutely, in my opinion, can make this competitive. However, I do believe that Virginia Tech will walk away with a win at the end of the day. Then you take a look at the rest of your non-conference here, and coming up next, you got 2 games against Big Ten opponents, and then a really tough road game on the road at Marshall, I believe Grant Wells' former team. Let's start it with the 2 Big Ten opponents and talk about Purdue. Purdue won the Big Ten West last year, but they lost a lot of talent. Aiden O'Connell, a couple wide receivers out of that room for varying of different reasons as well. And Purdue lost some good talent defensively. However, they also have a new head coach coming in Ryan Walters, former defensive coordinator out of Illinois, supposed to be one of the best young minds in all of college football. However, when you take a look at Purdue, Hudson Card coming in at quarterback, I think they have a lot of very nice weapons coming in through the portal. I think that's a Purdue team that can surprise some people this year. I think they're going to go on the road in Blacksburg and pull off this win against the Virginia Tech Hokies. Again, I've said it could be another struggling year for the Hokies. I believe they will struggle in this game. I think Hudson Card's going to make some plays, and Purdue walks away with a win. And then on the road at Rutgers, another very winnable game here. But when you take a look at the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, I do believe going on the road for this Virginia Tech team is going to be challenging this season. I believe Rutgers is going to be able to pull off that win. Quarterback situation is what it is at Rutgers, but they got some pretty good skill position players, some good players on defense. I think they're going to be able to beat the Virginia Tech Hokies there. So the Hokies pick up 2 straight losses against 2 Big Ten opponents. When you take a look at the Marshall Thundering Herd here too, this is not a pushover game either. Now, I know Grant Wells has been gone to this Virginia Tech program, and they did lose Corey Gamage to UCF, was almost going to be Purdue, but ended up being UCF. But when you take a look here, I think Virginia Tech is going to go on the road and win this one. This is going to be a very close, competitive game, but I think Grant Wells makes some plays against his former team. They definitely got the talent in the wide receiver room to be able to exploit this Marshall secondary. So I think Virginia Tech going to be able to win that game. However, getting in the ACC play, well, again, Virginia Tech at home in Blacksburg, always a place where an upset can happen, but there's just a lot of very difficult games on the schedule for Virginia Tech, one of which is going to be Pitt. I think people are underrating Pitt just a little bit this year. If Phil Jurkovec can stay healthy, he's going to be the new quarterback there. He's got some really good weapons around him. The defense loses a lot of key contributors, but there's a lot of solid pieces there. I think Pitt's going to go on the road in Blacksburg, be able to beat the Virginia Tech Hokies, and I don't see Virginia Tech going on the road and beating Florida State. Too much talent offensively, defensively. They have the Heisman caliber player at the quarterback position, a lot of versatility on defense. They added a lot of really good transfers. I'm really high on what Mike Norvell and the Seminoles have over there. Do not think Virginia Tech will win that game. And then when you break into the second half of the schedule, you got a game against Wake Forest here. Now, look, this is a very winnable game against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. They're losing a lot of explosive ability on offense. Sam Hartman's a big play quarterback who's transferred on to Notre Dame, and then A.T. Perry has moved on to bigger and better things, a really good option out of the wide receiver room. However, Mitch Griffiths at quarterback, I think, has what it takes to win at this Wake Forest program. Besides A.T. Perry, a lot returns in that wide receiver grouping. And defensively, yeah, you lose some key pieces, but there's some good talent there. I think Virginia Tech is going to pick up another loss here in this one. I think Wake Forest offense will be a little bit too much. But then you get your bye week. You get to stay at home. It is a weekday game, and it is at home against Syracuse. Another winnable game, and I think Virginia Tech is going to be able to get this one done. Syracuse is a team that returns Garrett Schrader and Oronde Gadsden, but losing Sean Tucker is going to be a big blow for them. He was a phenomenal talent at running back. There are a lot of really good pieces that leave that secondary as well. One, I believe, to the NFL, and the others, I believe, went ahead and transferred out through the transfer portal. But when you take a look at the Syracuse team, I definitely think Virginia Tech wins at least one conference game this year. To me, it just so happens to be Syracuse. Again, don't be surprised if it's really anyone else. Could be Wake Forest, could be a game that I've yet to cover down the line. But I just haven't beaten Syracuse here. But again, that probably tells you how the rest of the schedule is going to play out. Losing on the road to Louisville, I think is going to happen for this team. Louisville is in ACC sleeper. Sorry, let me fix my grammar for a second. Jeff Brom comes into his alma mater and hometown team. He has a familiar face returning at quarterback in Jack Plummer, who was with him at Purdue for a short period before transferring to Cal. Now, of course, with the Louisville Cardinals. Lots of transfers coming into that program. A lot of roster overhaul by this point in the year. I think they're getting on the groove. They're getting rolling. Virginia Tech's not going to be able to beat them, and I also don't think they're going to be able to beat Boston College as well. Emmett Morehead, get to know the name, college football fans, could be a breakout contender at quarterback. I think he's got a lot of very nice pieces, and yes, he loses Zay Flowers, but there's some good talent around him. That Boston College offense, though, has got to get better at running the football. Could be something that the Virginia Tech defense could exploit, but I got him losing that game on the road there. And then at home against NC State, I think NC State's also going to be a very talented team this year. Yeah, you lose Devin Leary, but Brennan Armstrong comes in, got out of that Virginia program, transferred over to NC State. He's got some new pieces in that NC State wide receiver room to be able to play with, but defensively, we know what this team plays with, a lot of intensity, a lot of energy. I think the defense will lead NC State to a win in that game. And then on the road against Virginia. Again, another winnable game, another, in my mind, 50-50 game. The emotions are going to be high surrounding this rivalry, surrounding this Virginia program. I think they're going to be motivated enough to get this win here against Virginia Tech. So all in all, I see 3-9. Now, I absolutely can see this Virginia Tech team being a whole lot better than they are right now. However, I just see Virginia Tech has got a lot of 50-50 games on the schedule, and I think they come out on the losing end of I think they come out on the losing end more often than not. I can definitely see 4-8, 5-7, 6-6 might be a little tricky given the schedule, but they can absolutely do it. But it's going to take some time for Brent Pry to build up this Virginia Tech program. That does it for my thoughts on the Hokies. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And hey, as always, remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.